believable enough where they may even have occurred once or twice, but it just gets to the point where you hear them so often that they become embellished and they become these urban legends.
Well, on your book it says the truth behind all those deliciously entertaining myths that are absolutely, positively, 100% not true.
Yeah, and that goes to show you that you sometimes have copywriters who get involved in the writing of the book. Because I wouldn't say, well, I'd say maybe a few of these might be 100% not true, but I'd say most of them definitely have a strong foundation in the world of reality.
Well, let me tell you about the one that just about got me. It didn't quite, but it got close. It was so close. A guy goes to a party in Vegas. Now, it's written up in various cities in various ways. This legend has grown. And, he gets slipped a Mickey from some beautiful girl.
Sure.
He goes to the hotel with her. He passes out. He wakes up in a bathtub full of ice cubes, usually.
Mm-hmm.
There's a next to him saying, quick, call 911. And he's had a kidney removed. In other words, it was a kidney sting. And when I first read that, I went, oh my God, right over there in Las Vegas, they're taking kidneys out. And that one has gone around the internet like a virus.
That's probably the single most prevalent urban legend that's out there. This is a classic example, Art, of a story that definitely has some foundations in truth. Because,
oh, you're kidding.
Well, there absolutely are some cases of gentlemen, if you will, on business conventions or vacations or whatever, who have been slipped Mickeys by women who have robbed them. Yeah, I mean,
robbed them, fine, sure, oh, sure.
But this whole horror story element about the kidney theft. Now, what I love about that story is that this gal or gals who are out there doing this harvesting of vital organs, that they're nice enough to submerge the guy in a tub of ice and put him near a phone and then give him a note saying call 911. You think if they're going to be as heartless enough to take the kidney that they'd go ahead and let the guy die. So I love that part of the story. I also like the idea that some woman who's wearing a short skirt and high heels and picks up a guy at a bar has the surgical skills to actually remove the organ and take it, and that she has the connections that she knows where to sell it in the black market.
Oh, well, now wait a minute. You got to imagine there's a skilled team of, very dark surgeons waiting that will rush in once the Mickey takes its effect and do their job and take the kidney away in one of those little things with ice in it.
In the adjacent room.
In the adjacent room, that's right. She calls them once she's out.
And then in the next room, there's the potential recipient of the organ who just happens to be a match and who's ready for the surgery. So, as is the case in a lot of these urban legends, when you really start dissecting them, if you will, you'll see that they really don't pan out. But again, yeah, I mean, is it true that men have been slipped Mickeys and have been knocked out by gals? Absolutely.
Yeah, but Richard, I almost read this one on the air. I went, oh my God. I mean, there are so many horror stories in real life. That's why these things work, because I think the American people are numb to what can go on. Kids killing kids, 6-year-olds, all that kind of stuff. So it's one of those things where you go, oh, he's, right over the hill from me. Usually it's Vegas. And so I came quite close to reading that on the air.
And you know what? Had you read that on the air, you would not have been the first broadcaster to fall for something. I mean, a lot of these stories have been reported as truth either by, radio hosts or newspaper columnists or TV anchors, whatever the case may be. And part of the reason is because they really do have that element of credibility, and it's also just much more fun to believe these things are really happening. And you make a really good point. There's so much stuff that goes on every day in the real world that is beyond anything you or I could ever create, that when we hear these unbelievable tales, you think, well, why not?
How are we to delineate? Because truth really is stranger than a lot of fiction.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the only thing you can do is always try to get the person who it occurred to or the first-hand witness, the eyewitness. And so often, and you know how it goes, and I know your listeners know how it goes, people tell you a story and they claim that it happened to a friend. And then when you ask them, well, what is the name of the friend? And then they say, well, it wasn't really my friend. It was my friend's cousin's hairdresser's best friend's next-door neighbor. And you say, well, you get that next-door neighbor to call me. And they say, I will. I'll get that person to call you. And then, of course, the story falls apart because you can never actually find the source.
So, in other words, you you get a lot as a columnist for the Chicago Sun-Times and I guess nationally syndicated. You get a lot of that, huh?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times I'll hear from readers who know I write about this stuff, and they'll say, hey, this has got to be an urban legend. But just as often, I hear from people saying, you've got to write about this. You've got to expose this ring of kidney thieves. And I always write back and say, give me the facts, and I guarantee you, if we have the story that there really is something like this going on, I promise you I'll write about it. But the story always falls apart.
All right, so that's the big one, but it's only the tip of the legend iceberg, right?
Absolutely.
What are some of the other good ones out there?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll give you one that's so new that I don't even have it in the book, but it's been making the rounds the last month or so, and it's the one, and again, you mentioned the internet, and that is the number one distributor of urban legends.
It's the breeding ground.
It really is, because it used to take, years for these things to develop, because you'd have to tell a friend, Now all you have to do is hit that, that button, that forward button on your computer, and it goes to 50 of your closest friends.
That's it.
And here's one I get almost every day, and most of the time when I get this one from people, they think it's true, and they want me to write the expose on this, and it's about the supposed study conducted at the University of New Hampshire on Kentucky Fried Chicken, the chicken itself, in which they determined that it's not made from an actual chicken, but it's made from a synthetic grade of chicken, and that's why Kentucky Fried Chicken has changed its name to KFC. I love that one. And so they're calling it KFC now because the truth is it's not really chicken, and government, regulations prohibit them from calling it something it's not. And please be aware of this. And the poor folks at the University of New Hampshire have actually had a, issue statement saying, guess what, we've never done such a study. Of course, Kentucky Fried Chicken has been reduced to having to tell people, look, we changed our name 9 years ago to KFC because fried just doesn't have a good connotation anymore. We didn't want people saying fried, and also because they offer so many other foods.
Well, this is supposed to be what, according to the legend? Some sort of genetically engineered, really weird chicken?
Exactly, that they've been able to do that so that, to cut down on costs. Of course, it's no good for you. And people are always citing this New Hampshire study, and they'll even, the emails will include these very realistic-looking press releases or excerpts from the study. I'm telling you, every day I hear from somebody who tells me about the Kentucky KFC study.
Well, if some newspaper falls for it somewhere, and they do a story on it, then that feeds the legend itself.
Absolutely.
And so by the time you get it, you've got these clippings, and you're going, I imagine the first time you got it, you went, wow. Or did you go, BS?
Well, my antennae are pretty, they're pretty finely tuned at this point. So I just thought, well, this has got all the makings of an urban legend because, again, little kernel of truth, if you want to say kernel reference to KFC, because Kentucky Fried Chicken did change its name to KFC, so there's that little bit of truth. Beyond that, it's all bogus. So, I look at something like that and I go, is it true? Probably not. But a lot of times in the urban legend, they'll say, well, it was reported on CNN, or it was reported on this and that radio show. And it's the kind of thing where you might not, if you weren't listening or watching at the time, it's kind of hard to prove that it was never reported on a particular network.
What got you interested in urban legends anyway? Was it just the fact that you had to deal with so many reports, or what got you going?
Yeah, and also I just think it's a real fascinating study in human nature. And when I first started writing about these, I was like you, I came real close to reporting one as fact. And when I first started writing about these in the 80s, and that was the story about, it's kind of similar to the kidney theft, where it's another one where somebody wakes up, and in this case, it's a guy who has a one-night stand, and he wakes up the next morning, and written in lipstick on the mirror in his bathroom is the message, "Welcome to the world of AIDS."
Oh, my God.
In other words, he had been seduced by a woman who had carried the deadly virus and was exacting her revenge on the men of the world by spreading it as often as possible.
Yeah, but you know what? There were, early on in the 80s, some people who allegedly, in fact, did spread the AIDS virus intentionally. I can think of a dentist that was alleged to have done that.
Yep, dentist down in Florida, who died, I think, as I recall, before all the trials were played out. That
That's right.
Because patients, and it appeared as if that had actually been the case. There was a case right here in Chicago of a man who had a hypodermic needle with his own AIDS-infected blood, and he was tried to inject people. So it's true that there had existed these monsters who unfortunately were infected with the disease and then tried to exact the revenge on the world.
But this particular story, Welcome to the World of AIDS, in lipstick on the mirror.
No evidence that it ever happened. In fact, I was told that it happened at the University of Tennessee, and then I heard later on that it happened at the University of Illinois. No, it happened in Vermont. And, you start hearing different locales, and you think, okay, wait a minute. It could have happened once. It could not have happened 24 times.
All right, so there must be a group of people out there. In other words, I could understand how the first one gets started, but it's not repeated faithfully. So that must mean that somebody, for example, gets an email and then changes the story to suit their own needs and reissues the story. I mean, this has got to be intentional disinformation.
I think in some cases it definitely is, and I think in the cases of some of the stories we've been talking about, people have a certain agenda. There's almost a moral behind these stories. In other words, if you're a businessman and you're at a convention in Las Vegas, if you don't go out and pick up some woman, you won't have this terrible thing happen to you where your kidney gets stolen. And if you're a college student and you don't participate in indiscriminate sex with strangers, you won't wake up and get this message. So they're cautionary tales, just as the urban legends in the 50s about, the killer with the hook on his hand or the babysitter being terrorized by a prank caller. They're always sort of moral tales saying, well, if you don't participate in these activities, these bad things won't happen.
Well, then might we not suspect even groups? Let's just go really out on a ledge and say, how about the religious right? Could they be the source of some of this stuff?
It could be the religious right. It could be certain liberal factions. It could be absolutely people with special interest of whatever sort. It could be, in some cases, unfortunately, it can be racism at work, or any kind of group that has a certain agenda or a certain message that they want to get out there, and they're warning you about this dangerous world and certain activities in this immoral world that we live in. So I think it's absolutely right. I mean, it's also true that a lot of times people are just innocently passing these along because they believe them to be true and they think they're helping their friends by issuing warnings. But let's not be naive. In a lot of cases, it's people spreading these stories on purpose.
Are you on the internet a lot?
Absolutely, every day.
Okay. Well, I don't think this necessarily qualifies as an urban legend, but if you're on the internet every day, your mailbox has got to be full of these giant warnings in capital letters with exclamation points. Don't open so-and-so. It's a virus. Your entire computer system will be destroyed.
Yeah.
Right? And how many of those are true?
Yeah, those have been almost always untrue. But again, we have heard stories, just in the last couple of months, about hackers who have created trouble with major internet companies and have, spread viruses where people have had their whole systems crash and that sort of thing. But most of the time, in those cases, once again, it's my belief that the people spreading those stories are disgruntled ex-employees of companies or rivals of companies. So you'll see someone saying, there's a lot of warnings about AOL, American Online, but one of the giants of the industry, and they're saying, don't get AOL 5.0 because if you install it, your computer's going to crash. Or don't open this. Or if you see, and again, I think they're trying to damage a company's reputation there.
Or they'll have little things like don't open Party Hardy or don't open Happy Days, or actually Happy Days was one. I'm not sure, but how I know is Happy 99 EXE, which is a stupid little virus. So there are stupid little viruses out there, but 99% of the warnings are all complete and total BS. Richard, we're at the bottom of this hour, so hold on. We'll be right back. There's a million of them out there. Richard Roper is my guest, and we're discussing urban legends. Every now and then there is a little bit of truth behind some of these. It's not 100% untrue, and they're interesting to listen to. Imagine waking up in the ice. Call 911. These dreams are made out of real. When my heart through the dark street, I travel the world and the seven seas. Everybody's looking for something.
1-800-825-5033. First-time callers may recharge at 1-775-727-1222. The Vital Card line is open at 1-775-727-1295. And to recharge on the toll-free international line, call your AT&T operator and have them dial 800-893-0903. This is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell on the Premier Radio Network.
Or if you're in a bathtub full of ice right now and you have a note, for God's sakes, call 911, not me. Urban legends is what we're talking about. The Chicago Sun-Times Richard Roeper is my guest. And there are so many urban legends. We're going to get to more of them. I wonder how many you have heard. By its very nature, adult-oriented. And so, you know, if you have children in the room, whisk them away. They ought not be up at this hour anyway. Shouldn't be here anyway. So get them out of the room. Because some of it is definitely adult-oriented. Richard, welcome back.
Thanks, Art.
All right. What's this thing about a dog swallowing a cell phone? That's one I'd never heard.
Oh, I love that one. That's obviously one of the newer urban legends. The story has been told, especially in some of the tabloid publications, is about the guy who gives his loved one, his girlfriend, if you will, one of those tiny little cell phones as a Christmas gift. And, you know, she's just thrilled about this new gift, and they continue on with the opening of the presents, and there's wrapping paper and packages all over the living room floor at the end of the morning. And you know, she goes, geez, I can't find the cell phone that you gave me. I don't know where it's at. It's somewhere in this pile. So like they're digging around and they can't find the cell phone anywhere. So it's finally the boyfriend gets the bright idea. He says, you know what? He goes, I'll call your number on my cell phone. And the phone will ring and we'll be able to figure out where it's at.
Right.
So he dials up the number and there's a ringing going on somewhere under the tree. And she goes, boy, it seems to be ringing right near Sparky. Good old beloved Sparky, or Sparky's dog. And she finally realizes when she puts her ear on Sparky's tummy that it's actually the dog is ringing. The phone itself has been followed by the dog. And of course she's mad at him, you know, their boyfriend, and oh my, how could this have happened? They call the veterinarian and he says, you know, there's nothing we can do about this other than to simply let nature take its course. So, you know, sometime later that day, Sparky goes out to the backyard and does his duty, and
there it is.
Pops this modern device of technology. And my favorite part about this story is that there was I know at least one of the tabloids actually ran a picture of a woman holding the cell phone and the dog, and she's smiling.
Oh no, you're kidding!
And I'm thinking, you know, gosh, even if this could have happened, would you be holding the cell phone up next to your face?
Well, anyway, it couldn't happen. Everybody knows something that size goes down to your stomach. It is not going to be transferred anywhere. It's not going to be pooped out.
Yeah, even the largest dog and the smallest phone, if you start talking about intestinal tracts and things like this, you realize that the dog might be able to chew on a phone. He may swallow parts of his phone, but, you know, he's not going to swallow the whole thing. And even if he did, it ain't coming out in working condition. Yet I hear from people all the time who swear they've heard this story.
Or more likely, the dog's not going to come out in working condition.
Exactly.
You can almost mentally picture it tumbling through the... Well, it's too awful to even talk about.
It really is, isn't it?
Yeah. So that one's zeroed out.
I've been told by many people that they swear that they know somebody it happened to, and I just have a standing offer. I said, you know what, you bring all the principles in this story, you know, in to meet me, and I'll write the story up. And then, of course, the person who it supposedly happened to just vaporizes.
Well, what are we to imagine, though? I mean, here's a picture of a girl with a smiling cell phone and the dog to substantiate. Where the hell did that come from?
Well, we're to imagine that maybe the tabloid paid a model a couple $100 to pose with Sparky and a cell phone because it's a fun story, you know.
I see. All right. Well, let's see. You've got so many here that I want to know about. The prehistoric Barbie doll?
Yeah, that's kind of a fun one. That's the story about the burnt-out hippie who keeps digging up things in his backyard and thinking he's found artifacts from a previous time, and he sends them into the Smithsonian, and they finally write him a letter back in very technical terms explaining to him that what he thinks is this prehistoric fossil is actually a Barbie doll, and they use all these terms that make it seem like it's, so they're basically trying to tell him, hey, you're nuts and you're wasting our time. And the supposed letter from the Smithsonian has been circulating for years, because it's supposed to be an example of how they're wasting our time with government money and resources by responding to these nutcases. But you call the Smithsonian and they say, look, we've never had anybody who's received a Barbie doll, and if we did, we wouldn't waste our time sending him a letter back explaining to him that he sent us a Barbie doll.
All right, this is one that I get. I think I get it every day, actually, and this is kind of adult-oriented, but it's the Good Luck Mr. Gorski story about the first man on the moon. And
Neil Armstrong.
Neil Armstrong, yes.
And that for some reason, that one's really been making the rounds again lately. And
big time.
And, yeah, we'll try to go through this delicately, Art, but the story basically is that when Neil Armstrong, when man walked on the moon back in 1969, of course, there was the famous saying that some one small step for a man and one giant leap for mankind.
That's right.
That if you study the transcripts, that the next thing uttered by Neil Armstrong, it was "Good luck, Mr. Gorski." And then he goes on to talk about technical things up on the moon. And for years, people tried to dissect, what did he mean with this "Good luck, Mr. Gorski" deal? And there were theories that maybe that was a
Before we go on, did he actually say that?
No, he didn't.
He did not say that.
He did not. And in fact, I've obtained the NASA transcripts, and your enterprising listeners who know their way around the internet can get access even there to the actual transcripts of what happened. What he said after that was, a lot of technical terms just about, how the surface of the moon felt and things like that, and kind of describing the feeling of being on the moon. But the supposed comment about Mr. Gorski has just lived on in infamy, and some people thought, well, he must be signaling a Russian cosmonaut, and others said, well, it has to mean something deeper than that. And according to the urban legend, just a few years ago, there was supposedly a press conference where a young reporter asked Neil Armstrong at maybe a NASA reunion party or something.
That's right.
And he said, well, gosh, it's been so long, I'll finally tell the truth about this story. And the story goes that a young Neil Armstrong growing up in Ohio was playing ball in his backyard, and the ball went into the next door neighbor's yard, and he hopped the fence, and the ball was right underneath the bedroom window of his next door neighbor. And when he went to pick up the ball, young Neil heard his neighbor, the male, asking his wife for a certain sexual favor, and her retort to him was, "You'll get that the day the kid next door walks on the moon." So that's why he said, "Good luck, Mr. Gorski," because he said, okay, you're going to get lucky. Now, the reality is that there was never any such press conference where this question was asked, and that Neil Armstrong has never told the real story, because there is no real story. And one of the fun things about this book was trying to track these down as best I could, so I called NASA, and of course they'd heard the story before, and I happened to have Mr. Armstrong's home number, and he's kind of a press-shy fellow. To his credit, Neil Armstrong is not a guy who's done a lot of Pop-Tart commercials and stuff over the
He's
years.
actually kind of a mysterious fellow in a lot
He
of ways.
really is.
Yeah.
He really is. And the folks at NASA strongly advised me that I probably wouldn't want to waste my time bothering this guy with the story. And I said, out of all due respect to the guy, I'm going to let it go because we know it's not true. But I was very tempted to call him up and say, hey, it's Gorski calling. Stop spreading the story about me.
I just wanted to thank you, Neil. So that one, I literally get that one every day. That one is really back up and going.
Yeah, and once again, because of the internet, I think if not for the internet, some of these stories might finally die out, but they just keep getting reborn. And you think that especially, the younger people who are so cynical about, don't believe everything you read or don't believe half of what you hear, you think people would be more jaded, but I swear they hear these stories and they still think that because it's on the internet, it must be true.
Well, there's no way, is there? But this was, of course, these went around even before the internet, not so well as today, but there must be some way to finally track down the author of this thing. Somebody wrote it with feeling. They really had to think this out to get this good a story. And wouldn't it be wonderful to somehow find that person?
It really would. And you'd think you'd think that the authors, if you will, the creators of these urban legends would step forward, but trying to track the source of an urban legend is like trying to find the bottom of a bottomless pit. You just keep spiraling downward and you never find ground zero. And even with some of these warnings we talked about, where they're telling you about this or that virus or whatever the case may be, nobody has ever stepped forward to my knowledge and said, you know what, I'm the author of this urban legend.
Well, even if they did, who would believe them?
Who would believe them?
I mean, if you consider the Kennedy assassination,
right?
If any person were to go to a microphone and have a press conference and tell the real story of the conspiracy that killed Kennedy,
yep,
it would just go on the pile of 10,000 others,
yeah,
and it wouldn't be believed. So if somebody came forward and admitted this, nobody would believe them.
Isn't that the truth? Somebody could step forward with a film of themselves with Lee Harvey Oswald planning it out, and people say, well, they just created that film.
That's
That
right.
can't be true. So, even if somebody stepped forward and said, I'm the guy who wrote the urban legend about Neil Armstrong, and here's the documentation, we'd all say, oh, yeah, sure. So I think in a lot of these cases, either the people who came up with these realized that there's no point in stepping forward, or a lot of them were created sort of over time in a group effort. Somebody told the story as a joke, maybe, and then it got embellished, it got finely tuned a little more, and then it becomes this sort of perfectly crafted urban legend.
So in other words, if you could do it, you would likely get down to somebody who said, all I did was write up what Fred told me.
Yeah. And Fred would tell you, hey, I heard the joke in a bar one night, and the bartender would say, well, a guy walked in the other day, he swore it was true. And you just keep going and going, and there has to be a beginning point. But I don't even know if sometimes the person who created it knows what they've wrought.
Well, there's a beginning point, all right, though we'll never find it. What I wonder is whether there's ever any ending point. In other words, these urban legends, like the Gorski thing, for example, they'll go away for a while, and then they come back with a vengeance, and a whole new generation of people buys off on it.
Yeah, and I could never quite figure out exactly why one finally dies and then it doesn't die, where it goes into hibernation and comes back. Although I think in some cases, there are enough media reports discounting an urban legend that almost everybody knows it's not true. But then a few years go by and people kind of forget. Our classic example of this is the urban legends that start on college campuses. Well, after a few years, you got a whole new group of students there. So the last group that learned it wasn't true, they're gone, and the new group of students are repeating it as true.
The new suckers.
Exactly. And the teachers who have been on campus longer, the professors are saying, oh, man, we heard this 4 years ago.
Any specific examples?
Well, the classic one going around the last 10 or 15 years on many college campuses from coast to coast is the story of the psychic who goes on the Oprah Winfrey Show and predicts that a psycho killer is going to strike a campus on Halloween. And campuses start getting really filled with, panic because students are sending out notices and putting up, flyers and bulletin boards saying, 3 days ago on the Oprah Show, a psychic came on and said a campus with an H-shaped building would have a killer on Halloween Day, and we have an H-shaped building, or we have an A-shaped building, whatever the case may be, and actually last year, the campus of San Diego State University almost cleared out completely because people were absolutely convinced that this is happening.
Really?
Yeah,
really? And all this is buoyed, of course, by Scream 1, Scream 2, Scream 3, Scream 10, whatever it is, slasher movies. And so everybody's going to be ready to believe it.
They really do. And, the story, that's a pretty good little cautionary tale, the one about the supposed killer, because according to the urban legend, the killer will be dressed as Little Bo Peep, very innocent outfit, and will be in this costume. And because it's Halloween, all kinds of people will be wearing costumes, so no one's going to even look twice at somebody dressed as Little Bo Peep. So it's sort of like, again, like the Scream movies, where there's even a disguise involved. Now, the reality is, of course, even if Oprah does some wacky shows, but she does not usually have psychics come on there and do predictions. And even if a psychic did go on and predict something as wild as that, you'd think they have the sense to say, let's not run this because we're going to create a panic. So, for all the wrong reasons, Oprah Winfrey has been tagged, unfairly as the person who has kind of created this urban legend. It's got nothing to do with it.
I wonder why Oprah why they picked Oprah? Just because she has some manner of credibility? If it's on Oprah, it's got to be true?
That's exactly right, because hers is the most popular of these sorts of shows. In fact, when this urban legend first started making the rounds, the psychic supposedly went on the Phil Donahue show, because that, at the time, 20 years ago, was the most popular talk show. So that urban legend has sort of changed to reflect the current media, popularity of Oprah as opposed to Phil Donahue. But that's when it comes and goes. And, it won't last 2 years in a row on the same college campus, but it will come back after 4 or 5 years.
Has anybody ever collected these before you wrote this book?
There have been some studies on urban legends. In fact, there's to give credit where it's due, there's a professor named Jan Harold Brunvand, who's actually an expert in the field of folklore and mythology, and he's been writing about this for some time. A lot of the urban legends I have in the book are newer ones. That's why I didn't talk too much about some of the urban legends from the 50s, because I felt like they've been well documented, but especially the ones that are internet related and have either been spread on the internet or about the internet. Those are fairly new ones.
Oh, there's a lot of them about the internet. Messages saying that legislation has just been passed that you will have to pay by the minute on your telephone, which they probably considered, and various other things that all are meant to scare you to death if you're an internet user.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of warnings out there. Unfortunately, again, a lot of companies have been tagged with unfair labels. Again, to harken back to Oprah, supposedly certain clothing designers have gone on the Oprah show and have said racist remarks. And, these quotes will be repeated and repeated and repeated, and people are urging boycotts of these various designers, none of whom have ever gone on her show. In fact, Oprah Winfrey took the very unusual step last year of actually going on her program and saying, I'm tired of people saying that Tommy Hilfiger has come on the show and uttered racist remarks. He's never been on the show. He's never said any such terrible things, and don't you believe it? Because it was actually, she was concerned that it was going to hurt his business.
Well, some of them, Richard, can be very damaging. There was one written about me, dispensed, we found out, from the University of California at San Diego, one of their computers. Somebody maliciously wrote a hate letter to the Filipino people.
Yes.
And let me tell you, this one's been around the world maybe 2 or 3 times now, Richard, and I'm supposedly the author of this hate message. And I'm telling you, I get these incredibly angry letters every single day from people as far away as the Philippines and Europe, all over the world. And of course, we've issued statements. We put things on my website saying,
I've seen the things on your website.
My wife is half Filipino, for God's sakes. I would never write such a thing, but somebody did it, put my name to it, and they refuse to not believe it.
Yeah, and that's the unfortunate fallout from this art, no matter what you do. And you're doing the right thing, because to ignore it is not going to make the problem go away. So you've got to you have done what many of these companies have done, where you just go right after the source. You try to issue the denials, you put the information on the website, you do everything you can. But as you know all too well, there are just going to be people who are only going to hear the urban legend and never hear the denial or never see the denial.
Of course.
And they're going to repeat it, and they think that they're performing some sort of information service. Well, here's what this guy said. Unfortunately, they're contributing to the problem. That's why I always caution people. It's fun to talk about these things, even to share them on the internet, but you know what? At least let people know, hey, this is a fun urban legend. It's not true. And in your case, it's not a fun urban legend.
Yeah, there are a lot of fun urban legends, and a lot that are not so funny. They can be damaging either to people or, as you point out, to companies.
Yeah.
And there have been a lot of those. There also have been a lot of urban legends that have surrounded movies. Mm-hmm. Now, the best of those has got to be, and I'm afraid I believe this one. Three Men and a Baby. Now, there is, it's either, I don't know what it is. It's a single frame in 3 Men and a Baby that would purport to show either a cardboard cutout or a ghost, but it's only one single frame of a boy. And I don't want to attack this one until we get back, because we're at the top of the hour, but I guess you're going to tell me it's not true, huh?
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm going to have to tell you it's not true.
I've seen the picture, so we'll find out in a moment. Stay where you are, Richard. I'm Art Bell, and And this is Coast to Coast AM, talking about urban legends by Babe Ruth.
Love was the last thing I had on my mind. Holding you is the one that I thought I could never
Call Art Bell in the Kingdom of Nye from west of the Rockies at 1-800-618-8255. East of the Rockies, 1-800-825-5033. First-time callers may reach out at 1-775-727-1222. And the wildcard line is open at 1-775-727-1295. To reach out on the toll-free international line, call your AT&T operator and have them dial 800-893-0903. This is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell from the Kingdom of Nye.
Oh, it just has to be true. It has to be. From 3 Men and a Baby, we all know there's a ghost in that movie because we've all heard it. And then about a month or two ago, somebody sent me the exact frame, the single one frame in which a little boy appears behind a curtain in 3 Men and a Baby. I'm going to have Richard, who's written a book all about urban legends, go and look at this photograph now before he decides to blow this up. All the good love we've got Chukka indeed. Because we've got the picture right here. So, if this is not a ghost, and this is an urban legend, then somebody has manufactured evidence of a high quality. In fact, if you'll go to my website right now and scroll down to Richard Roper's name, you know, you can read about his book there, and we've got a link to his book on Amazon, so much fun. But also, you will now see the photograph, the infamous photograph, apparently, of the ghost in 3 Men and a Baby. We've got it up there right now. You'll see it by Richard's name. Go take a look. That would be my advice. Go take a look, and you tell me whether you think it's an urban legend or what you think it is. The Chicago Sun-Times, Richard Roper, who has written a really cool book called Urban Legends. And by the way, in the book, he's got gazillions of urban legends that you can read all about. Many more than we're going to have time to talk about tonight. So this would be like the Bible on urban legends, I guess. So if you want to be able to tell somebody they're full of it when they tell you the latest story, this is a book you want. And I have to hold it up on the webcam. I will do that here in a minute. Nice, really nice book. However, here we have a problem because, as you know, I've talked a lot about ghosts on this program. People have called and talked about 3 Men and a Baby. A single frame, supposedly, of motion picture showing a boy behind a curtain. Something that was not real. A ghost. A single frame, not as part of the movie. Now, I never believed it until a month or two ago when somebody sent me the photograph that you can now see by Richard Roper's name of the boy behind the curtain. Richard, are you there?
I am here.
All right, can you see that?
I can.
All right, now, how can you possibly explain that? I mean, there it is.
Yeah, and that's an absolutely legitimate frame from the movie 3 Men and a Baby. That's
it is
Ted Danson. People will see if they go onto the website there, and I believe that's Celeste Holm, the actress who played his mother, and they're holding up the little baby in
that's right.
The baby, and clearly visible in the background in a very eerie shot is this ghost-like apparition in the curtains there. There's nothing doctored at all about that shot. And when that movie came out, especially when it came out on video, and over the years this story has continued to circulate,
yes.
The story behind it was that the apartment in which the movie was filmed was was once occupied by a young couple who had a 9-year-old boy who accidentally killed himself.
There you are.
With the father's shotgun.
So there you are.
And that when the movie was filmed, this little boy's ghost appeared in the background.
And there it is.
And there it is. Unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, given the circumstances, the reality of the story is not quite so dramatic.
Well, let's hear it.
People will remember in the original movie 3 Men and a Baby that Ted Danson's character was an actor. Now, in the original shooting script for the movie, there was a running joke about him doing dog food commercials, and that those scenes were mostly cut from the film. But he was a kind of a wacky actor who was doing these dog food commercials, and this cardboard cutout about 2/3 of the size of a real human being of Ted Danson was on the set.
Yes.
When they filmed this scene, somebody left this cardboard cutout in the window there, and that's actually what you're seeing is a smaller sized cardboard cutout version of Ted Danson.
Okay, but is it many frames? In other words, as you watch the movie, do you clearly see that for many frames or just one frame?
I think you see it very briefly, and apparently, as you well know, they're shooting a movie. It might take 3 days to shoot one scene, and perhaps they shot it one day, and somebody noticed the prop and they got it out of there as they continued shooting the scene. But that is actually the story.
How did it make it to the final print then?
Well, sloppiness. Somebody did there, and really people didn't notice it when the movie played in theaters. It was only when the movie was on video,
and people could still frame it.
You could still frame it, rewind, take a look at it again, and where this story really falls apart is 3 Men and a Baby was actually filmed on a soundstage in Toronto, so it was not even filmed in an actual apartment building. The delicious part about that story, some people really got into the details on that one, is that supposedly the mom of this little boy rented the movie because, of course, her apartment was featured in it.
No.
Only when she rented the movie did she see the ghost of her own little boy, and then she supposedly went on the talk show circuit talking about how cruel the producers were to include this image of her ghostly son, and then she supposedly was committed to a mental asylum because she just couldn't handle seeing this ghost in the movie whenever it would show up on TV.
Holy smokes. Well, did when it came out on video, is this something, you don't want to accuse a movie studio, of course, or anybody, production company or anybody, or advertising of perpetrating something like this, but you gotta know, a gazillion people went out and rented that movie to try to find that ghost shot.
Exactly, and we would, of course, never accuse them of perpetuating this.
Never.
But is it a bad thing that it happened to them? I don't think so. It doesn't really hurt the movie for people to say, hey, rent out this mediocre comedy because there's this great ghost thing. And maybe you won't even buy a copy for yourself. So they probably didn't create it, but it probably didn't bother them too much. So sometimes it's not a bad thing to be...
Well, I got one so current that I bet you don't even know about it.
Okay.
You know the movie Mission to Mars?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there are 2 trailers out there for Mission to Mars right now.
Okay.
One, apparently, this is a story now, one shows the face they concocted to be the face on Mars.
Okay.
Which is not, in fact, the one at Cydonia. And the second trailer talks about, allegedly, a 25-year cover-up by NASA, which, by the way, consulted on the film, and shows the real face at Cydonia. Now, this is a very, very serious rumor going around right now, and of course we're not going to know until the movie actually comes out, but I'm trying to put my hands, and will put my hands, on this second trailer, and then there's all kinds of rumors going around about 2 separate endings for the movie, one using the real face at Cydonia, the other using this made-up face, and that man's origin is Mars and all the rest of it. But NASA consulted on this movie,
right.
So it would be impossible for them to use the real face on Mars, which they scoffed at for years and years.
Well, that's a good one, and you're right. I haven't heard that, but I'm going to be with you and trying to figure this out. I'm going to look into this tomorrow, immediately.
All right. And then, actually, it's a Touchstone picture, which is Disney. And Disney has been the victim of a number of urban legends, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah, and that, of course, going all the way back to the infamous one about good old Walt himself supposedly being frozen, waiting for that one day when they can find a cure.
Wait a minute, you mean he's not?
I don't think so. Although I'd like to believe that you could pay an extra $5 in Disneyland and maybe see Walt frozen, but he's actually, I believe, buried out in California. But the Disney company has been the subject of so many urban legends and rumors, and some of them are internet-based. For example, you often hear about the Disney company offering free vacations to the first 1,000 people who respond to an email, or $500 vouchers, et cetera, et cetera. And they're usually signed by supposed Walt Disney Jr., Walt's son. Well, there is no Walt Disney Jr. There's a Roy Disney Jr., but of course he would be Roy's son, not Walt's son, and he was Walt's nephew. Probably more interesting and fascinating, and also more based in truth, are some of the urban legends surrounding subliminal images in Disney films.
Oh, yes.
Animated films.
Yes.
And here's a case where you really have to say they could be true depending on your interpretation, and your listeners will probably recall some of the controversies about various Disney movies in which, if you look really closely, or if you actually, freeze frame the movie itself, you'll see things, whether it's image of the word sex in the sky and in some clouds of smoke, or perhaps some naughty parts on Jessica Rabbit in the movie Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Oh.
And, it has been kind of determined over the years that certain Disney animators like to have a little fun and maybe sneak something in there once.
So, also, in other words, you're saying maybe.
I'm saying maybe, and it's sort of like the truth is in the eye of the beholder. Now, in one case...
Well, you looked, right? So what have you beheld?
I have, all in the name of research. I've spent some time on this. Well, I can give you one case where absolutely there was an image, and that's the movie called The Rescuers, which was released originally in 1977, but was re-released just about 1 year ago in the winter of 1999. And about 38 minutes into the movie, there was a scene where a train is flying through a town, and in the window of a particular building, you can see a topless woman. And you have to actually freeze frame the VCR, because it was at exactly 2 frames out of 110,000 frames in the movie. But sure enough, there was this topless gal. And Disney had to recall 3.4 million copies of the movie because of some animator's prank. And they actually did release a statement saying, yep, it's there, and yep, we're sorry, and yep, we're going to recall the movie because this is supposed to be for kids.
And I wonder if the animator is still at Disney.
I have a funny feeling probably not. Probably not.
So that's really true then.
That one's absolutely true.
How many people possess? Did it ever get out? Is it on video? I mean, can you?
You know what? There are some copies out there. Most of them were caught before. They're in the stores but hadn't been sold or rented out yet. But again, you go on the internet, you go on somewhere like eBay, and you can find bootleg copies, if you will, of the original Rescuers with the image in it.
But you think the other ones with the subliminal sex messages and the extra parts on on the rabbit end? So what about those?
I think in Who Framed Roger Rabbit that some of the early laser disc versions, you did see Jessica Rabbit perhaps forgetting to wear her underwear.
You're kidding!
I think that actually did happen, although in the later versions that image is erased. The movie The Little Mermaid, there's a lot of controversy about the minister who performs a wedding between the characters of Prince Eric and Ursula. And some people say that the minister at some point actually looks as if he's becoming physically aroused himself. I say that it's actually his knees that were looking. Those are his knees sticking out from under his tunic. But there were a lot of religious groups that said, no, Disney's trying to get away with something here. Same thing with the movie The Lion King. Some people say that you can actually see the letters SEX appearing in a cloud of dust at one point. What I'm told is that it's actually the letters SFX, and that somebody...
That would be special effects, right?
Exactly. So somebody was having a little fun just putting SFX for special effects, but a lot of religious groups got really mad about that. They said, look at Disney, they're trying to tell kids sex is good.
Another total... you'd like to find the people who do these things and wring their necks.
Yeah, they put us all through a lot of trouble sometimes, to make these things to go away. And of course, if you're Disney, you're going, oh boy,
I'm sure. And then snuff movies. Now, there was a movie recently, I bet you can name it, about a snuff movie. About this lady had hired a private investigator to have her now deceased husband investigated to see if he really commissioned a snuff movie, right?
Yeah, the movie was called 8mm.
Thank you, 8mm, Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, and that really is one of the many examples of a fictional film that kind of takes an urban legend and says, what if? And for years there have been stories going around about these supposed, snuff movie, if the listeners don't know, is a movie in which somebody is actually killed. For real, not as a dramatic effect.
For somebody's perverted pleasure.
For somebody, yeah. And there are all kinds of stories about European snuff films. And even to this day, I'm hearing people saying, oh, you're naive to think they don't exist. But in almost every case, like in every case I've been able to find, the supposed snuff movies are just repackaged versions of old horror movies, or they're elaborately staged ruses in which actors participate in this kind of grainy documentary that makes it look as if somebody was actually killed. But
so to the best of your knowledge, there's no such thing as a snuff movie, a real one.
That is absolutely true to the best of my knowledge. And if anybody's got evidence to the contrary, obviously I'd want to know about it. But
it would be a big story.
It would be a big story.
Though, when you consider the perverted human condition in many parts of society today, it just seems sickly possible.
It really does. It really does. And it's come, unfortunately, it's come very close to being a reality. I know there was an infamous case in Canada in which a young couple tortured and killed a babysitter, a teenage babysitter. And there were audio tapes that they made for their sick pleasure that were actually played in court. And then there may even have been some video of that. So, technically have there been these sort of movies? Yes, but they weren't really being distributed for anybody's, sick pleasure. But the kind of world we live in, it's only a matter of time before life or death, in this case, imitates urban legend. And somebody does it just so that they have something like this.
What is the dark side of Oz? Do you mean by that The Wizard of Oz?
Yeah, The Wizard of Oz, and another...
What's wrong with that, other than the witch getting crunched under the house?
Yeah, unfairly, that witch has been unfairly maligned all these years. Well, the Wizard of Oz is, of course, a beloved film, but also kind of a cult film. There are people who own copies of that movie and study it very, very closely, and there was a story going around, and still goes around, that one of the Munchkin actors hired by the Wizard of Oz hanged himself, committed suicide, and that there's actually a scene where you could see him dangling from a tree. The reality is...
Yeah, right. Even if that happened, they're going to really include that in the film.
Exactly. Something so sick happened where the Munchkin would hang himself from a tree. You'd think they'd say, cut, and, let Judy Garland go back to her trailer and have a quick drink and try to get over it.
That's right.
But it was actually a bird flapping its wings in such a way that almost makes it look like somebody's hanging from a tree. So that one's been going around for a long time. It's not...
Now, how does a bird flapping its wings look like a person hanging from a tree? I don't know.
That's what I said when I watched it, Art. To tell you the truth, I didn't think it looked like it that much, but there are people who see it and they go, that's a Munchkin swaying from a tree, and I'm like, no, that's an exotic bird flailing its wings.
Boy, so many bubbles burst. All right, hold on, Richard. We're at the bottom of another hour. They go very quickly. So many urban legends, so little time. I'm Art Bell, and of course, this is the unpredictable Coast to Coast AM.
First-time callers may recharge at 1-775-7 line is open at 1-775-727-1295. And to call it on the toll-free international line, call your AT&T operator and have them dial 800-893-0903. This is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell from the Kingdom of Nine.
You know, I'm still not sure about 3 Men and a Baby. That picture is very suspicious. So, you know, if you think about it, even I am not quite convinced that it's total bunk. Believe it or not. But I guess it is. That's what we're talking about right now is urban legends. My guest is Richard Roeper. He wrote a book on the subject called Urban Legends. You can get it. Go to my website. Scroll down to his name. It'll take you to Amazon.com where you can get it real cheap. We've only got Richard till the top of the hour because he's got to get up like really early in the morning and do something. So I'm going to ask him about 2 that you have faxed to me, 2 urban legends, and then, actually 3, very quickly, and then we're going to go to the phones. Richard?
Yes, sir.
All right, here's one for you.
Okay.
That American Airlines always has one non-Christian pilot or co-pilot on board any aircraft they fly in case of the rapture.
Ooh, that's a good one. I'd love to hear more about that. That one I don't know, but I like it.
You like it?
I like it a lot.
All right.
I could be in the sequel, Art.
Here's one. That pull tabs from pop cans are helping buy some kid a kidney. If true, he could have been dead 10 years ago. Should have been.
Yeah. They've been collecting pull tabs for this kid for the last 15 or 20 years. That's another one of those unfortunate ones where people are trying to perform a good deed, and it's like, you know, there ain't anybody out there who wants those pull tabs.
All right, and this one more complex. Just heard this one. 2 duck hunters in Minnesota go hunting in the winter on a frozen lake with their new Jeep Cherokee. They are going to use dynamite to blow a hole in the ice and then shoot ducks which will land in the open water. One guy throws the dynamite, but his dog chases after it. The retriever grabs the stick of dynamite, begins running toward the men. Thinking quickly, but shaking, the other man shoots the dog, but barely hits it, and the poor scared shocked dog runs under the Jeep, which is then blown up and sinks along with the killed dog.
That one I have heard, and it's a funny one. It sounds a little bit more like a Roadrunner Wile E. Coyote cartoon, but I like that one.
So that one, you cannot confirm nor deny that one.
I cannot confirm that, although I hear Jesse Ventura might have been involved up there in Minnesota.
And then there's one that we've got to kill, and then we'll go to the. I lied a little. It's poor Richard Gere.
Oh my gosh,
the gerbil story about Richard Gere.
Yeah, it's the longest relationship of his life has been with this gerbil. Poor Richard, this story's been going on for 20 years, and there are so many people who swear they know the nurse who was in the emergency room the day he was wheeled in with this gerbil in a very uncomfortable place. And I always say, oh gosh, well then put that nurse in touch with me. And of course, once again, that nurse doesn't exist because the story never happened. But man, that story's been on for about 15, 20 years.
And he must seriously suffer from that. I mean, that's a terrible story.
Yeah, it's a mean-spirited story, obviously, and Richard Gere has that whole Zen thing going on, so he refuses to ever talk about it, which just makes people say, hey, look, he's never denied it. Well, he's never confirmed it either, he just won't dignify it.
Well, that's one way to handle it. I'm not sure if it's a good way, because when you refuse to comment on it, it only gives it more power.
I think you're absolutely right. Well, I think you got to address these things head on.
All right, well, let's head on to some calls. Wildcard line, you're on the air with Richard Roeper. Hello.
Hello, Arbel.
Yes, sir. Where are you?
Here in Naples, Illinois.
Okay.
I listen to you at 5:50 a.m. off St. Louis.
Yes, sir.
I have a question for Richard. Has he ever, on a 3 Men and a Baby, has he ever watched it pass where you see the figurine in the window you know, how the movie will fan right, and usually most people stop it, but if you watch it further in slow motion as they come back past the window, the figurine is gone, and if you look in the left-hand corner by the curtain, there is a shotgun sitting stock down with the barrel up in that corner.
I know what you're talking about. It does seem to be a shotgun, and I guess, again, I think it has something to do with the continuity where something was left there. And it really is, when you think about it, for a major motion picture, really sloppy filmmaking.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, I'll take a look at it one more time. And there is something, as you mentioned, Art, there's something eerie about that picture, even when you know the truth. I don't know. It does have a strange look to it.
It's just hard to buy that in the editing process, they could get a frame in there like that. It's hard to buy. I mean, I guess anything can happen. So
it's almost easier to believe that it's a ghost than that many people at a professional level would allow such a mistake to appear. It almost really is.
well, when you consider the editing process itself,
Yeah.
it's in an ongoing shot. So, I give up. I don't know. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Richard Rover, Urban Legends. Hi.
Hi, Art. Hi, Richard.
Hi.
Art, this one might be your favorite one.
Okay.
With Unsolved Mysteries, the little children pushing the car over the railroad tracks.
Well, this is no urban legend. Richard,
Oh, that is true?
well, as far as I know it is, or I've been propagating it.
Okay.
But there is a story which has been reported in the newspapers in San Antonio, Texas. There was
Are you familiar with this one?
I need to hear more about it.
Okay, here it comes. And so a school bus was on the railroad tracks, and a train collided with it. It was a horrible tragedy. A bunch of children were killed. And the story is that if you park your car on the railroad tracks and just put it in neutral, that little hands, people put talcum powder on the back of their cars, little hands will leave prints, and your car will move off the railroad tracks.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I wouldn't discount that one, and I don't know. I don't know if I'd want to give that test myself out there on the railroad tracks, but
And Art and Richard, with this baseball one that's been bugging me for years, Richard, is anyone buried under home plate in any stadium or under any of the bases?
well, we still haven't found Jimmy Hoffa, have we?
Oh, come on, you know what I mean.
The rumors about people being buried under a home plate, or in Jimmy Hoffa's case, maybe the end zone at the Meadowlands, have been around forever, but they've never been able to dig up any evidence.
Well, they couldn't. He'd be in concrete.
There you go. No, as far as I know, it's not true.
All right.
All right.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. Somewhere, but he's somewhere.
He is somewhere.
He could
Might
be.
be working with Elvis at Burger King. Well, you know.
Yeah, Elvis stories. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Richard Roper. Hi. Hello.
Hello?
Yes, there you are, sir.
Yes, this story or something similar to it, has been around for a long time. There's somebody driving their car, and suddenly a person appears in the front seat and issues some kind of an apocalyptic message, like the end is near, or
Well, there's another version of that story in which the person is a hitchhiker.
yeah, or a hitchhiker.
And then picked up, and they issue the apocalyptic story, and then they disappear.
Yeah, suddenly they're out of the car.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of stories about that.
Yeah, it's been. I just wonder if Richard's heard of anything like that.
I have, and in various neighborhoods they give the ghost different names, and they, sometimes refer to it as the vanishing hitchhiker. And again, that's a tough one to really call an urban legend, because I believe that things like that can absolutely happen. And I think, is it possible? Yeah. Can any of us ever prove that it happened? No. And the only other thing is that it seems to have happened in so many different towns that you got to believe that in many cases it's just a local piece of folklore. It didn't really happen.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
All right, what about this Nike shoe rebate thing?
Oh yeah, boy, you can. All you have to do is send them your old shoes, and they'll send you a pair of new shoes, according to the urban legend, at least. And that's another one where a company gets besieged by these well-meaning emails and responses from people who really believe that Nike's giving away free shoes. Well, if they did that, they'd kind of go out of business at some point. They're going to have to do more than just get your old shoes.
Well, I think the big question is, if you call Nike and say, how many shoes do you get back?
Yeah.
Demanding the offer, what do they say?
They call you bad names and hang up on you because that's how many shoes they've received.
Yeah, all right. Well, see what damage they can do, folks. First time calling line. You're on the air with Richard Roper and Art Bell. Good morning.
Morning.
Hi.
This is Brent from Flagstaff, Arizona.
Flagstaff, all right?
Yes. To get back to Walt Disney, on the cover of The Little Mermaid, there's a picture of a male's genitalia on the cover.
Yeah, there's some sort of structure in the background that looks really, really like male genitalia. And, they denied that cover art looked like that, yet they changed that in subsequent versions of the video. So whether or not it was intentional, it sure looked like that's what you were seeing there. So they did rectify the situation.
All right.
Well, I have another one. Now, this is a total urban legend. My friend told me this, and he heard it from another friend, that on the internet, there's a man who actually showed live human mutilation over the internet.
Yeah, that version of the snuff film legend. There are all sorts of little grainy films you can supposedly see, but you're right. You're hearing an urban legend there.
All right, it is one. Wildcard line, you're on the air with Richard Roper. Good morning.
Hello, Art. This is Charles from Eagle River, Alaska.
Hello there, Charles.
Hey, I broke my arm the same day you did, hang gliding.
Really?
Yes, I did. Okay, I got an urban legend, I believe, a long time ago. You know the singing group Ohio Players?
Sure.
On their soundtrack, Roller Coaster of Love, there's a scream in the background, and it said that a woman was murdered at the time when they were recording that. They didn't.
Now, I believe you actually have hit on one that Richard wrote about.
Yeah,
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's a good one. The Love Roller Coaster Death Scream, which actually is also mentioned in the movie Urban Legend. One of the characters is telling a girl this story, and the funky hit from the 70s, Love Roller Coaster, does have this very eerie, high-pitched scream at one point on it. And the rumor, these things get so detailed, it was supposedly the woman who actually appears on the cover of the album, dripping in honey, and she supposedly had suffered some burns from the modeling session, and she was so mad that she showed up enraged and showed up at the studio wielding a knife, and then was disarmed and stabbed to death herself by the manager of the group, and they loved the sound of her death so much they supposedly put it on the song. And of course, none of this is true.
Oh, it's not true.
And actually, the other rumor about that one is that because the song was called Love Roller Coaster, that you're actually hearing the sound of a woman who was killed on a roller coaster in an accident, and they had obtained that tape and they were using it.
Okay, so the whole thing's bogus then.
It's totally bogus.
See what happens. See what happens. See how people sound when you burst this bubble.
I know, I feel bad. I'm the Grinch who stole Urban Legend.
Oh, man.
Thank you, caller. You take care. Oh, man is right.
He's heartbroken.
You can tell. All right, East of the Rockies. You're on there with Richard Roper. Where are you, please?
Hi, Rich. This is Mike from Niagara Falls, USA.
Okay.
Enjoying the show tonight, and just 3 quick points I wanted to make, and actually a question to follow up. Number one, Richard, not to take away from your book or anything, but there's a great website called Snopes.com.
Absolutely terrific website.
And somebody's put an awful lot of time into this because they kind of go into the psyche of the urban legends and things like that.
I think it's a great, probably the best Urban Legends website. There are tons of them out there, but Snopes is probably the best.
The one thing that they mentioned on there regarding the KFC thing is that actually Kentucky Fried Chicken did put out the press release that because of the whole fried thing, right, that they were going to. But is it true, or is it like an extension of the legend that Kentucky is now trying to charge people for using the state's name, i.e. the Run for the Roses? Kentucky Derby has now been changed from the Kentucky Derby to Run for the Roses. Have you ever heard that?
I have not heard that, but I'd have a hard time believing they'd be able to enforce such a regulation. Sounds like an urban legend in the making to me.
It does, and it's on Snopes. So that, and two like urban legends, and then I'll let you go. The whole, the first was, I think, theater seat cushions with infected
Oh, yeah.
needles. And then the new one, the one that I've received a couple of times, is be careful of these using a payphone. Needles in the coin return, and then some sort of spray or something that's put on the receivers themselves.
Oh, my God.
The tainted needles in the payphones is a popular, relatively new urban legend. And that's one of the rare cases where the urban legend has been copied by real life. There were a couple of pranksters in West Virginia last year who did start leaving needles, not tainted with any deadly disease, but they did think it was funny to leave some hypodermic needles in the slots of some payphones in response to the police saying that it was an urban legend in the first place. So now it's true, but it's only true because they heard it as a rumor.
Now, there was a movie about urban legends in which the plot was some character acting out all the urban legends.
Right.
For real.
Yeah, and the movie was simply called Urban Legend. And actually, they're making the sequel as we speak. Urban Legend 2 will be out this summer. And I don't have anything technically to do with the movies, but that's kind of a clever idea.
You should be a consultant.
I'm waiting for their call.
All right. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with Richard Roper. Hi.
Hey, Art, I just wanted to make a comment. I'm calling from Los Angeles,
Yes, sir?
and I work in the movie industry. And about it being sort of shoddy filmmaking and stuff, you would be amazed at what gets through the editing process as far as little mistakes and things left out of place and things that don't match and things like that.
So you're saying it's absolutely possible?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Yeah, you get crews that are trying to do X number of shots a day and trying to do so many things at once, and it sometimes the little things get missed.
Sure.
There's actually whole books on little flubs, and really famous one is Raiders of the Lost Ark, when he falls down into the pit and he lands and the cobra's right in front of him. You can see the reflection of the cobra in the glass that they're using to separate between him and the snake.
You're kidding.
No, if you watch it, you can see it.
Well, that's interesting, and it might tell us how some urban legends get started, I guess. So little time. First time caller line, you're on the air with Richard Roper. Hi.
Hi, I'm originally from San Antonio. I'm calling from Idaho. However, what I'm calling about is the train tracks.
Yes.
It is actually a true story, and all the streets around the train tracks are named for the kids that died in the accident.
Yeah, I believe that's right. I really think that's a true story.
That really is. Also, in San Antonio, there's also a story about the donkey lady, and there's a certain phone number that you can call, and if you call the number, a female voice will answer. It will sound like a female voice, but it will sound like a female voice hee-hawing like a donkey does.
Really?
It's honestly, this is. I was never able to get a hold of the number to find out what it was, but apparently there's also a donkey lady in the San Antonio area, and that goes along with the urban legend of the train tracks and putting the talcum powder on the train tracks. But what it actually is with the tracks is it's gravity that's pulling you, because it is at a slight slope.
Well, how about the story of the talcum powder on the back of the cars with the kids' handprints?
Well, we did put the talcum powder on the cars. I have actually been out to the tracks. We did put the powder out.
You've done this?
Yes, I have.
Wow.
It's in San Antonio, and it's on the south side of San Antonio, and the
okay, but how about the handprints?
Well, they didn't show up.
But
The car did move, but there were no prints on the car.
Okay, I've got you. I appreciate that. Thank you. One more, maybe. Wildcard line, you're on the air with Richard Roper. Hi.
Yes, hello. Good morning, Art.
Good morning.
This is Michael in Philadelphia.
Yes, Michael.
Yes, good evening, Richard.
Hi, how you doing?
Pretty good. Okay, I got two questions about urban legends. Do you have any good urban legends about UFOs or aliens? And I'll hang up for the answer. Thank you. Bye.
All right. You're welcome.
I'll tell you that when it comes to UFOs and aliens, the reason I didn't even get into them in the first book is there are so many, and I mean, obviously there are so many books that could be done.
Richard Roswell.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's not an urban legend to me.
It isn't to me either. And apparently to the Air Force, because they had a press conference. Really stupid, too. Did you ever see that Air Force press conference on Roswell?
Yeah.
It's like they were trying to get people to believe in the whole thing.
Exactly.
So
I don't know what they're trying to accomplish.
All right, so for the rest of all the fun and the truth about urban legends, you should get Urban Legends by Richard Roper. You can go to my website, link over on Amazon.com right now, and they sell really cheap, don't they?
I think they got a pretty good deal on Amazon there.
They do about 30% off. Otherwise, bookstores across America. Richard, I know you've got to get up early in the morning. Thank you so much.
Art, thank you. It was a pleasure.
Good night.
Good night.
So next time you hear something that sounds like it should be true, don't you necessarily believe it.
Wanna take a ride? Call Art Bell from west of the Rockies at 1-800-618-8255. East of the Rockies at 1-800-825-5033. First-time callers may reach out at area code 775-727-1222 or call the wild card line at 775-727-1295. To talk with Art on the toll-free international line, call your AT&T operator and have them dial 800-893-0903. This is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell.
And you know what? This one is not an urban legend. They played this again and again and again at Waco, and if you listen to the words, it's pretty chilling. They played it again and again and again. You got to sit and actually have to listen to the words of this. I'm talking about. Good morning, everybody. I'm Art Bell, and in a moment, we're going to talk with the famous man, I think famous man, who sits out in the middle of the desert, sometimes for days or even weeks on end, and talks to people who call a certain telephone booth out there. I finally got him on the line. Coming up next. Received a fax. It says, "Hello, Art. I am the madman in the desert who camps for days at a time at the Mojave Desert phone booth." This is a phone booth out in the middle of nowhere, I guess. I've wanted to chat with you for a few years now, but I have always suspected the government monitors all your calls. Well, sure they do. This was confirmed for me when Mel from Washington called you, and also the guy from Area 51 who warned of the triangle-shaped ones. But now I just don't care anymore. I wish so much that you could have gotten through to me on my last trip to the desert. Now, I did try. Some of you will recall. I am 40 years old now, and would like to tell you all of my experiences, especially what I just went through in the desert last week. The closest, in quotes, they ever came. I'm at the phone booth in the desert often. I'm going back soon. I'll stay for a week at a time. I live in Concord, California. His name is Desert Chad, and he's got a website, which we can tell you about in a moment. Here is, he says, now he could be an urban legend. Maybe he's an urban legend. I don't know. Here's Desert Chad. Chad, hello.
Good evening, Art.
Are you real?
Yes, I am.
You are really the guy who goes out. Where in the hell is this phone booth?
This phone booth is sitting on a plateau 4,200 feet up in the middle of a Joshua Tree forest on an old mining road off of I-15, as say you're going from Baker, California into Vegas.
Right.
To the right. There's three different ways to get up there. I believe a rancher has one of the ways blocked at the moment. I would suggest four-wheel drive. even though I don't have a four-wheel drive.
Why would anybody put a phone booth in a place where you'd need a four-wheel drive vehicle to get to it?
Well, I'll tell you, Art, there used to be a mine up there in the 60s, and the phone company put that phone in there so the miners would be able to call home to their family.
Oh.
And I believe it was 1968, the mine closed, and the phone company never bothered to go up there and take the phone out.
You're kidding. So that phone booth, to this very day, remains there.
That phone is, yes. It's an old, maybe like a 1964 model. All the glass is shot out of it. It's in a billion shards all around it. There's holes in the frame. The door's ripped off. I met a local rancher, because I camp out there regularly, Charlie. He was telling me that it was the oddest thing. This phone company came up there in 1977 and put a push button in and then left. And he laughed because there's no traffic on this road.
Right.
It's 15 miles.
They actually upgraded the phone.
Yes.
Well, the phone company is a big company, and you can imagine the bureaucracy in a phone company would send this poor slob up into the middle of nowhere to replace the phone and upgrade it.
And he's probably wondering, what the hell am I doing this for?
I'm sure he was. So there's actually a modern push-button phone there.
Yes, there is.
And nobody's ripped it out or destroyed it?
No, and Art, it rings 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, from around the world. I talked to Switzerland, I talked to Australia, Africa, of course I talked to Kansas, Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Why, gee, a million wise, why do people call from all over the world? How do they even know to call this phone booth in the middle of nowhere?
I'm not really sure how fast, or I don't understand how fast the phenomenon swept up. But it's only been recently starting to appear in magazines. I'll be out there camping out, for instance, and in one day, I have to take the phone off the hook at night to sleep, and I can't sleep.
You're kidding.
I know, I feel guilty about that.
It rings that much.
It rings that much. I feel guilty about taking it off the hook, but I feel guilty to ring it, and I don't get out of my hand and
So
answer
in
it.
other words, when I called you, it was about a week and a half ago, I think, I actually dialed it on the air, and all I could get was a busy signal.
I was talking to the world.
You were actually awake at that hour.
I get up in the mornings before the sun comes up, get my coffee on. I put the phone on receiver, and I have stood in that phone booth to up to 3-8, from 7 to 3.
7 in the morning till
3 in the morning.
Till 3 in the morning.
Yes. I leave the phone booth. I can't speak for 3 days.
Chad, why do you do this?
I really don't know. I mean, some callers, I had a caller from a guy in Toledo, Ohio, who said, what the hell are you doing standing in the middle of the desert answering a payphone? And I said, sir, what are you doing calling a payphone in the middle of the desert?
To which he replied,
he said, I don't know. And I said, well, I really don't know why I'm here. What does it all mean? We came to the conclusion that it's just, people just want to connect. And that is just an extremely unique way to do it. I mean, we have the internet, and you can sit in your house, and you can talk to the world. There's just something so unique about standing in the middle of nowhere on a plateau, talking to Australia.
Oh, yeah.
And women from Paris, France.
Women from Paris?
Oh, women from Paris, women from Germany, women from Tahiti.
Really?
Oh, the girls from Tahiti just laugh and laugh and laugh and just scream, we love American men.
We love American men? Have you ever met anybody that you have talked to on that phone?
Actually, I have. I've talked. I was up there for the Millennium, and as a few of the callers coming in, they're really intrigued that I was standing up there in the middle of nowhere.
I mean, especially the girls from France.
Well, yeah, some of the girls from France have my cell phone number now, and they said when they learn better English, they're going to call me.
You've got to be kidding.
No.
So you never know. You could meet your mate.
Oh, yes, definitely. You can meet some really unique people out there. I mean, this one guy from Germany called, and I like to ask them what their name is, where they're calling from, and just, questions about their life. And this guy told me he couldn't tell me his real name. He called himself Cinderella. So he was wanted by the FBI. He was the Antichrist. He was into satanic things. I mean, they get some wild calls. And I'll hang up the phone, and the next call will be like a 10-year-old innocent little girl from Germany who I can't even understand her name. It's amazing.
How does this phone number of this phone booth get passed around the world? I suppose the internet, huh?
Well, I think it's on the internet now, but before it was passed, I guess it got picked up on the AP service. LA Times reported this little small article on it, and it spread from there. Like one day, I hung up the phone on it, and I had about 25 calls in a row from Scotland. I started asking these people, where are you getting this number?
Right.
And they say, it was in our morning paper. I talked to a guy from Istanbul, Hungary, who got the number out of a small underground rock magazine. I mean, it's just unbelievable where these people are getting the number from.
Well, you know, Chad, there are some, Desert Chad, there are some who would say that if you meet your mate in a situation like that, where you're in the middle of a phone booth and she's in, I don't know, Jamaica, whatever, and you end up getting married, that the two of you would absolutely deserve each other, and have a hell of a story about the way you met.
Oh, you bet.
How long have you been doing this now?
You know, actually, the first time I've ever been to the desert in my life was for the millennium. I'm always usually at the beach. I like the ocean surf, and I ocean kayak and surf and stuff. And I was thinking, not really worst case scenario. I didn't really give a damn if the computers went down, the power went out. You know, I'm still alive. That's cool. What I was worried about was like all the crazy people. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't want to be in a situation and caught up and get caught in the crossfire. So I'm looking at a map of California where I live, and I'm trying to find the safest place to go. And I'm thinking, well, the desert, there's no one out there. So I go to the bookstore and I read everything I can on the Mojave Desert, the plant life, the weather temperature, everything, the animals.
Trying to figure out whether you could survive.
Yeah, and then I packed up 2 weeks, 3 weeks worth of food, about a month's worth of water, all the firewood I could get. I did run out of firewood 3 nights before I left, but thank God a rancher came through for me. So I just packed up and I took off, and I went up Plateau, and I'm driving up this old mining road, and I'm just tearing the hell out of my van. And I come around this bend, and there is this phone booth, and it's just so odd. I'm looking.
So then, did you actually begin all of this? I mean, this is almost, we talked about urban legends before I got you on the phone. This is almost in the category of the urban legend, you know, the phone booth out in the middle of the desert with a guy who talks to people from around the world.
Yeah.
But you're saying it's no legend, it's really true.
It is really true. It is there. I live in that thing.
You live in it.
Basically, most of my days when I'm in the desert, I'm standing in that booth.
Other people would ask, but you must not have a life.
I have a very, very, very busy life. I find time, you know, I have to have like a week or 2 weeks off at a time just to be away from everything.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I'm really not away from everything. That damn phone just won't stop ringing.
Well,
It's just too interesting. I can't let it go.
Have others, it's like a compulsion.
Yeah.
I guess. All right, have others taken up your cause? In other words, do others know specifically where the phone booth is? Is it a crowd to get to that booth now, to sit there and answer it?
Oh, no, it's not yet. But you know what? It's the popularity of it is it's spreading so fast, I'm afraid it's going to be its death. Because if people start trailing up past those ranchers' houses, they've been living up there, you know, in isolation for years and years and years. And so there's a parade coming by their house pretty soon.
They're not going to like it.
Yeah, I read an article in the LA Times not long ago. It said Mojave Rangers declare war on the booth.
War on the booth?
War on the booth.
What?
The Rangers I have met have been very nice to me.
Why would they not? Well, because they don't want people spoiling the area environmentally.
Yeah, it's a national preserve, and it's a place. It's an out-of-the-way place where tourists don't usually go. So if people start crowding there, that means they have to go out of their way to drive 15 miles up that road just to make sure everything's all right at least once a day.
15 miles.
Well, sure. Yeah, it's 15 miles from the nearest paved road.
Boy, that would not be easy to find.
No, it's not easy to find. I just found it by sheer luck.
Did you disseminate the number, Chad, or... Now, I know you've got a website, right?
Yes. And that was totally unexpected.
It's members.zoom.com/Desert Chad. Right?
Yeah, and then a / after Desert, /Desert Chad /
Desert Chad twice?
Yeah, no, there's a / after the word Chad.
After Desert Chad.
Yeah.
CHAD.
And you don't have to type in triple desert.
But what I'm wondering here is, are you the one that got this started? Or was it already going?
No, it was already going because this is a crazy thing. When I came around the bend and I seen the booth, the phone was ringing, and I park my van and I get out and it's just ringing, and I'm looking around 360 degrees, there is nothing, and this phone is ringing. I thought,
You're looking for somebody who's going to answer, right?
I picked it up. It was New Zealand.
New Zealand.
The very first call. I'm standing in the middle of the desert, looking at Joshua trees. A couple of cows walk by me. I'm talking to a lady in New Zealand.
About what?
She was asking me about the weather there. Why is it really in the desert? Is it real? A lot of overseas callers. I had a guy from Scotland call me and said he heard a rumor that it was in downtown Vegas, and it was all a joke. And I told him no, and I explained to him it is real. And I sent him a picture of it. I got his address. I took a picture of me.
Oh, that's a good question. By the way, are there pictures of it on your website?
Yes, I have 27 pictures of my adventures out there.
You do?
Just over the millennium, yes. I have a lot more I want to put up, but I've been busy at work. There's a lot.
Oh, so you do work then?
Yes. I'm a subcontractor, so I can work when I want. I just contract myself out to various companies, and
I see.
it allows me to do what I want.
So you can then devote your spare time to your hobby.
Yes, I have more spare time than most people, yeah. Because I'm not really chasing after money. I can give a damn about that.
Has anybody who's called ever, either solicited you for money or sent you money or just plain solicited you?
No one's ever solicited me, but people have sent me gifts in the mail. I talked to a record producer in Istanbul, and he sent me some CDs.
A record producer in Istanbul, Turkey.
And I talked to a fireman in Columbus, Ohio, who's sending me a fire hat from the station he lives in. And this is a good one, Art. Right before I left, day before yesterday, I picked up the phone, and it was a company who distributes guitars and violins, and the whole company has been interested in that phone. They've been calling for a month, and it just rings off the hook, and no one ever answers. I picked it up. I talked to him for 5 minutes. They're sending me a guitar.
No.
Yeah. Now I'm not saying, if anybody goes up there, you're going to get showered with gifts. I mean, that's just a couple little trinkets I got, but I sit there weeks at a time, or days at a time, I'm sorry.
How many of the people that call on the phone think you're crazy and ought to be called Crazy Chad?
Well, a lot of them. I get a lot of calls from Florida, and they're just shocked that someone answers the phone, and they all say the same thing. You're a nut. They love that word nut down there. You're a nut. You're a nut. And I can't believe people just
I suppose the best
believe you're standing in the desert.
I suppose the best comeback is, well, what are you doing calling me?
Yeah, exactly. And you just want to connect. It's just it's a crazy thing.
Do you get more guys or more girls?
I get it goes in waves. I get a lot of female calls from France, and then all of a sudden I'll get all these drunken guys from Scotland. Oh, I get this guy.
Drunken guys from Scotland?
Yeah, I get a lot of guys that calls from bars. And
but occasionally you do get the female, right?
Oh, I get lots of females. Yeah.
Okay, Chad, hold on. All right.
Okay,
stay right there. Hello, baby. Yeah, this is the Big Bopper speaking. Oh, you sweet thing. Anybody out there know Chad? Will I? What? Of course I will. Oh, baby, you know what I like. We'll be right back. Chantilly Lane has a pretty face. I'm on
To reach our depth in the Kingdom of Mali, from west of the Rockies, dial 1-800-618-8255. East of the Rockies, 1-800-825-5033. First-time callers may reach out at 1-775-727-1222. Or use the wildcard line at 1-775-727-1295. To reach out on the toll-free international line, call your AT&T operator and have them dial 800-893-0903. This is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell on the Premier Radio Network.
Well, Richard Roper from the Chicago Sun-Times, who wrote Urban Legend, said, I'm an urban legend. I am, and so is my guest, Desert Chad. You imagine sitting out there in the middle of the night, in the cold, in the desert, by a phone booth that nobody knows about, or maybe everybody knows about, and taking calls from all over the world for who knows what reason, except to have a lot of fun. Desert Chad, he's my guest. Whose name is Desert Chad, that's what we call him, and he how frequently, Chad, do you, I guess, pack up your supplies and head for the desert?
Now,
First of all, where are you now?
I'm at home now. I'm in Concord, California.
Concord, California, all right.
Yeah.
All right, how often do you pack up and...
Well, I'll tell you, after I went up there for a week over the Millennium, I came back and I couldn't get out of my head. I was trying to concentrate on my work and I just couldn't do it. And I only lasted about 3 or 4 weeks and I took off again. And I stayed up there 5, 6, 7 days.
7 days?
A blur. I'm not really sure how many days. After a while, it's surreal.
I mean, don't you get sunburned standing there?
Right now my nose is about to peel off my face. I forgot to put my sunscreen on.
You can't do that. I mean, the desert will kill you.
Oh, yes, it will.
So what do you bring with you?
I bring a lot of potatoes, prepackaged snack foods, and dehydrated fruit, and things like that, and lots of water to cook and to bathe with. I just heat the water on the stove, and, I'm out in the desert by myself, so I just strip down naked and...
Naked?
Yeah, I sponge bath myself off. I've actually stood in the booth naked and took calls.
Really?
Once, for about 20 minutes, it got really cold.
Did you... The desert has unique characteristics. In other words, during the day, it warms up very nicely, and it's like a spring day in most places, a lot of times. And then at night, the minute the sun goes down, as you must well know, it gets cold out there, baby. And if the wind's blowing, it's really cold.
Oh, you know it. I've never seen temperature extremes swing like that. I'm watching this beautiful sunset setting over these volcanic cinder cones. I'm staying out there going, this is beautiful. And it's about 55 degrees. And the second I can't see the sun, it feels like it's 20 degrees. I couldn't believe it. I'm just freezing to death.
Okay, I want to try something here, Chad.
Okay.
Just for grins. There we go. Now, let's see what happens. What I'm doing is I'm ringing that phone booth right now. I'm going to... Probably not going to be anybody there now, huh?
No.
Are there others like you, though, that are doing this now? I mean, do you have even 1 or 2 other...
Well, I'll tell you, Art, some people come up and just spend like a few hours answering the phone and leave. Some people will come up and camp like one night with me, but they always leave because it's a harsh environment. People can only take it a short period of time.
So you've got to be prepared for an odyssey.
You have to be very prepared.
If there was somebody up there, they could conceivably be in a car or a vehicle like yours, hearing the phone ring right now.
And they would have to answer it. And once you answer the phone one time, you can't not.
You can't not answer it?
You just let it ring. You take it off the hook first.
It drives me nuts hearing a phone ring that I don't pick up.
I'll just picture it right now, Art. In the middle of the desert, it's night, there's no lights, there's no cars, there's no traffic, and there's a phone ringing right now.
Right now?
Right now. There's coyotes probably scattering.
Yeah, right, because there's no glass left in the phone booth.
No.
So in other words, when you're standing there, you're subject to the wind and the cold and whatever else.
Yes, when it gets very windy, I have a tarp, and I tarp the booth off on 3 sides, and I tape an umbrella over the top of it sometimes into the doorway.
I see.
And I got a little stool right there. I light candles up at night, and there's no light. You gotta bring a lot of candles and tape them all over the booth.
So then you're just sort of like if somebody were to see you at a distance, it'd probably look pretty ghostly, you there with the candles burning in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, I bet it would.
Well, there's one other aspect I want to ask you about this, and that is because of where you're going. We all know this part of the world. I live adjacent to Area 51.
Yes.
And if you spend a lot of nights in the desert, alone, in the cold, in the dark, then you must have seen stuff while you were out there.
Oh, yes, I have. Actually.
Like what?
Well, over the Millennium, I was
I knew that place, you know, and they
Wait a minute.
Not answering. Please try your call later. We're sorry, but your call will now be disconnected. 113T.
Yeah, there you are, see? Nobody answered.
no. Oh, yeah, Art. Over the millennium when I was there, for 2 nights, I've seen these lights that I've seen a few times, maybe 3 or 4 times in the past, at isolated beaches on the north coast. They're little orbs, and they change colors really violently. I mean, it's like,
Oh, it's amazing that you would talk about orbs because a guest of mine, Peter Davenport, all of a sudden we're getting all these orb reports, orange glowing frequently.
Oh, Art, in 92, I seen an orb very close, and this, I want to call it a cloud, but it looked like a fake cloud. It was kind of a dirty cloud that was oscillating so fast back and forth. I could see the trails of it. It was moving so quick, and this, it was only maybe 4, 5, 6 telephone poles high. These stacked telephone poles on the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, when are you going back next for everybody out there who might want to connect with you in the middle of nowhere?
I will be going back possibly within 2 weeks. Inside of 2 weeks, yes. I'm going to try to bust my butt at work and get some money together and pay a few bills and then take off.
Aren't you worried that like maybe some forest rangers or something will come by and talk to you for a while and you'll tell them what they're doing and they will take you in for a real quick examination?
Art, anytime I see a uniform, I panic.
Well, I mean, they're going to say, typical cop of any kind is going to say, hi there, what are you doing? What you doing out here? And you're going to say, well, I come out here in camp to answer this phone when it rings. See, at that point, they're going to start thinking psychiatric evaluation.
Exactly. I've always been slightly worried about that. So far, it's been cool.
You mean they actually understand?
Yeah, the one ranger, he's been really nice. Actually, I can sit up there for days and not see a ranger because it's not on the beaten path. You can sit up there for a week and they might come by once.
Well, that's all it would take.
Yeah, like the last time I got really lucky, I mean, the guy rolled by and he was a young guy. And he had a big smile on his face. He just kind of waved, and I waved back, and I was just thinking, keep going.
Keep going. Keep going. I can sort of imagine a dialogue. Young fellow, this is really interesting what you're doing. Have a seat here in the back of the car, and we're gonna let you talk to some really nice people.
Okay. Sure. Yeah, right. I'll tell you. Art, there's something fascinating, though, I wanted to tell you about.
Sure.
This last time, I think it would be March 1st, March 1st, late at night. No, not late at night, I'm sorry. It was only about 9:30 or 10:30 between that time. I thought it was going to start lightning. I thought I seen a couple of flashes, and I was standing in a metal box on a flat plateau. There's no place to be.
Good point.
Yeah, so I took the phone up and I get in my van. And I can't sleep, and so I'm just looking out my window. I have these nice big bay windows in my van. I like the sky out there. There's no lighting. You can just see up still get stars.
Actually, I tell people across this country that where I live, you can look and you can see the Milky Way literally from one horizon all the way to the other horizon.
Yes, I know. I've seen it.
Right.
It's incredible. So I'm enjoying the view. And, God, I hope I can describe this right. It's the entrance I need to get right on this. I see a pinpoint of light. At the second I see the pinpoint of light, it burst out to the side. I would say like a lighthouse beacon. The light got wider as it went out.
Right.
And started at the point. I mean, the point and the flash were milliseconds apart. And I was, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
So I get up real close to my window and I'm looking at it, and there's nothing. About a minute or two goes by. It's like I can't take my eyes off of it. And all of a sudden, I don't want to say it didn't make this sound, but the only way I can describe it is it just popped in the view. And there it was. I mean...
Well, there what was?
Okay. It has a yellow light on top. I've seen this before at a beach called McCurver's Beach, but I mentioned it briefly in my journal on my website. I'd like to go into more detail.
Oh, you have a whole journal on your website?
Yes, I have a journal of just my adventures out there in the desert, but I touched briefly on an incident at a beach called McCurver's Beach. It was a very, very intense incident. It was the same light. It was the same light this time, except it was so close I could see actually more of the light. This is the very first time, Art, I have ever seen a solid structure. I've only seen,
Oh, I agree. So it was more than a light. You actually saw a beam.
It was close enough.
Oh, my.
It was zigzagging toward me, and I'd like to go into more detail about what was in my mind and all that.
Well, here, let me imagine what might be in your mind. I mean, you're 24 miles or whatever from anything.
Yes.
And you're all alone, and it's nighttime, and it's dark, and here comes this thing toward you. I mean, you could imagine being, I don't know, disemboweled and left in the desert like a gutted cow.
Well, actually, Art, I'm not worried about that because of past experiences. I kind of knew what they were there for. I hope I don't sound like a nut, but I kind of knew what was going to happen. I asked for it, and then I decided I changed my mind, and it left me alone. But it zigzagged.
So you wished it there?
Oh, I've seen it before, and
now there are those, Chad. They would say two things. One, that you were a victim of exposure, that you had been out in the desert sun and cold too long, and you began to hallucinate.
Well, I wouldn't buy that, though.
You wouldn't buy that?
No.
There are also many who would say that you take alcoholic refreshments out there with you.
Actually, New Year's Eve, I took 5 bottles of champagne. Other than that, I really don't drink much alcohol.
Excuse me? 5 bottles?
Yes.
Did the people understand what you were saying on the phone at all?
Actually, I got really crazy on the phone. I got a little carried away a little bit. I was trying to talk women into taking their shirts off and stuff. I mean, it wasn't going to do me any good. I couldn't see them, but just getting a kick out of it.
How many of them did?
Actually, 4 or 5 said they did. Only one of them I truly believed. And one girl called me up, and I had phone sex on the phone out there, and that was weird. Some girl called me up. She heard I was in the desert, and she was trying to give me phone sex or something.
Really?
Yeah. It was very interesting.
Well, I guess you're going to run into all of it out there because people have really strange motives. I mean, for another thing, aren't you a little bit afraid of... here you are. I mean, you tell people basically where you are, right?
When I go there?
Yeah.
I just tell people I'm going to the desert and there's a phone booth, but I really never took anybody except...
No, I mean, when somebody calls you on the phone and they say, I've heard this is a phone booth out in the middle of the desert, out in the middle of nowhere, where is it really? You tell them, right?
Oh, yes, I describe the surroundings, and they're just blown away.
Well, suppose somebody were to decide to come and actually see you, meet you.
Well, this is great. I wanted to tell you about this. If we can go into detail some other time about this sighting I had, team, because it really wobbled really bad, and it came up close by the band, but I want to get into that. But let me tell you about this, because you're going to love this. I heard about people coming to meet me.
Yeah.
3 guys from New York City called me 2 days before New Year's Eve, and they've been calling the booth for 6 or 7 months. No one ever answered. I answered. We ended up talking for about 20 or 30 minutes, and before the conversation ended, the guy goes, Chad, I think I'm going to come out there and visit you. I'm going to fly into Vegas, rent an SUV, and let's have a party New Year's Eve. I said, sure. 3 guys from Vegas called, told me the same thing. I said, sure. A couple from Santa Barbara? Sure. A couple from Michigan? Okay. A couple guys from Fremont, Southern California. Before I knew it, Art, I was being descended on, New Year's Day Eve by people. I had 40 people. I had to dig another fire pit.
What? You mean they actually came out?
Art, they came out. I was standing on the phone talking to Germany or something, and this little Jeep comes up, and this guy opened the door and goes, are you Chad? I said, yeah. He goes, I'm Nick from New York. I talked to you the day before yesterday. He said, oh, I did. And I tell you, Art, it was amazing because I started to worry because no one knew each other, and we were miles from any kind of help. And I'm thinking, there's alcohol, it's New Year's Eve. What if there's a personality clash here?
Yeah.
What is going to happen? And you know what? No worries.
that phone booth seems to only draw a certain type of person. I figured that out. Out of everybody that's passed my way up there,
I mean, it's like there's a profile for a person
they
who...
are extremely cool, laid back, respect the landscape, the booth, what's going on with it, respect the overseas callers, don't be a jerk to them, you know.
Be a good American.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even though these guys from Iran, let me tell you something about this.
You got calls from Iran?
I can't even say the word on the radio, but there's this guy. He gets me all the time. And I don't let him get me riled on the phone, but sometimes I'm getting a little sick of him. I don't know how he gets through so many times, but he tells me all these nasty things about my mother, and in the background I hear these guys screaming, "Down with America, down with America."
He insults you?
Oh yeah, he insults me, and he insults me beyond all belief, and I try to kill him with kindness, and finally he gets so mad at me because I'm just so nice, he hangs up. But finally I got so fed up with Art, he calls, and I recognize his voice right away. I said, "You know what, buddy? Bill Clinton's coming over to kick your ass." He said, "What?" I go, "I'm sending my president over there, I'm tired of you." And then I hung up on him. And you know what, that's the only caller I've ever hung up on.
So in other words, normally you don't hang up on them.
I never hang up on anybody. I talked to a lady in Canada who was 62 years old. She was a shut-in. She had back surgery. She was on morphine. Her family neighbor came and visited her. I talked to her for an hour and a half. We traded emails, and I stay in touch with her.
Do you have a family?
I have a family, but I rarely see them. I just have a couple of sisters that live about 60 miles away from me, and I just live with some friends.
So your parents are not alive?
No, neither are.
Your sisters are, though?
Yes. I just see them on holidays.
I take it that you've at least told your sisters what you do?
Oh, yeah, they don't. Every time I leave the house, they can't believe what I'm going to do. When I came back from Japan, they could not believe, what I told them I did over there. It was just surreal.
Yeah, I have some Japan stories myself.
Yeah.
And anyway, but they don't think you're unbalanced.
Yeah, they joke about it. They say, you must have a chemical imbalance in your brain or something. But, I have a good time. And I don't worry about what other people, if you go through life worrying about what other people think about you, because you're an old man and you've never done anything you really want to do because you're worried about what another human being is going to think of you.
You're right. Oh, no, you're right.
Yeah, you can't live like that.
I think what you do is cool. Now, I can have Keith, I'm going to give your website out here again.
Sure.
And I can have Keith put a link up to it. Now, in addition to photographs of the phone booth, the phone number is there also?
The phone number is on my opening page, yes.
All right. Your website is members.zoom, that's XOOM.com/Desert Chad /.
That's right.
That's correct?
That's correct.
Okay, well, we'll have Keith get a link up to that. And again,
I'm going to be adding a lot more. I've got a short little 3 or 4 minute video. I take 3 calls. One guy calls to order a pizza, and he's not joking, Art. He thinks he called a place to order a pizza. And then I took a call from Scotland and a call from France, and I got it on a little video.
You have all this on video?
Yes.
And did you manage to take the voices of the people calling, or just...
Actually, I haven't been able to do that. Someone has. I'm involved in a film crew found me one night when I was up there. After a film crew from LA came up to shoot a short documentary on the loneliest phone booths on the planet. They pulled Art, look at this. It's like 1 in the morning. I'm out in the middle of nowhere. I got a sleeping bag over my head. I got 3 candles lit, and off in the distance, because you can see, miles away.
Oh, yeah.
I see these lights coming toward me, and I'm thinking, my God, I'd rather have aliens and humans coming at me right now. I feel safer, Who drives in the middle of the desert at this time of night? Are they dumping a body out? Are they seeing my candles? I'm blowing out candles.
Yep.
I still can't let go of the phone. I'm talking to this girl in Germany. They pull up. It turns out the LA phone crew, they look at my journal, my phone log. They look at me, and they find out what I've been doing out there. Now I'm in this independent film, and they shot a bunch of footage of it. And it's just
Are you going to be in some sort of A&E special or something?
I believe it's going to be released at Sundance next year.
At the Sundance Film Festival?
Yes.
So then you're sort of a living urban legend.
I guess, because they came back up and shot more footage of me since I've been up there again. And I think the director's flying into San Francisco next Thursday.
What? So there could be Desert Chad, the movie.
Yeah, and they're interviewing some of the callers that actually got through and talked to me, some of the overseas people.
Oh, you mean they actually fly? They're going to fly and talk to these people? And
I don't know if they're going to... some of the people are actually coming here. I got a kid in Germany who I cannot believe this. He calls me on my cell phone while I'm at work. He's getting his plans together. He's trying to get a credit card that he can use in America. He's coming. He met me at the phone booth, Art. This kid called me at the phone booth. He got through a couple of times, and now he wants to come visit me and wants me to take him up there. I said, sure, I'll take you up there.
So, to all the people who would say, you're crazy as a loon, you have too much time on your hands, you need to get a life, you would say what?
I have a life. I'm having a great time.
Well, Desert Chad, my friend, you're my kind of guy. I appreciate your coming on the air with me tonight.
No problem.
I wish I could have gotten you at the booth.
Next time, I'm going to let you know ahead of time when I'm going to go.
Would you do that?
And maybe we can arrange a time, and I'll just keep the calls short. You maybe just keep trying to get through.
That's all I can do is keep trying. That's all anybody can do.
That's all I can tell anybody to do, yeah.
All right. Desert Chad, thank you.
You're welcome.
And get some sleep.
I'll try.
Well, there it is. Not an urban legend, but really the real thing. Crazy Desert Chad, who sits out in the middle of nowhere and answers phone calls from all over the world. I'm Art Bell, and this is Coast to Coast AM.
From west of the Rockies at 1-800-618-8255. East of the Rockies, 1-800-825-5033. First-time callers may reach us at 1-775-727-1222. And the wildcard line is open at 1-775-727-1295. To reach out on the toll-free international line, call your AT&T operator and have them dial 800-893-0903. This is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell from the Kingdom of Nile.
Well, it's all true. Desert Chad's website is linked from our side now, and there are very good photographs of the phone booth out in the middle of nowhere where Chad goes. And I suggest you go take a look. Plus, it's such a catchy tune. You find it going through your brain again and again. If you go to the site, the urban legend site that was mentioned, we've got a link up there. You will see the bare-breasted photograph or frame that was referenced in the discussion we had a little while ago. It is one of many actually, that are there. But we have the link to that website as well. So there you are. In a moment, we'll begin open lines. Anything you want to talk about, fair game. I've got just a couple of things, but then we'll move to open lines. Elections are concerned, I don't care. If it's come down to Bush and Gore, you know what? I just don't care. Right back to where I was. Any little glimmer of hope that there could be some change. Bradley, maybe McCain, gone. So, it's a nightmare. It's going to be a choice between Bush, who I consider to be, personally, he gives me the creeps. Maybe it's just because he looks so much like his dad, I don't know. And Gore, who will be a continuation, no doubt, of... And, I already know what the campaign is going to be about. Gore took money at a Buddhist temple, right? Gonna pound that one. Gore is going to probably draw parallels to the last part of the Bush president. And, the whole thing, oh, man. Here's something kind of interesting, though. This appeared in the Chicago Sun-Times on February 29th. You can believe it or not, but it's true. The headline of the article, Keith, if you want to find it, go find it. It's called Science Turns to Indians. Remember I had a call about this? NASA and the Indians? NASA sure is doing a lot of strange stuff lately. In an unusual marriage of interests, the federal government has turned to Indians to combat one of the greatest environmental challenges of the next millennium, climate change. Oh my God, you think about that for a minute. The federal government has turned to the American native to fight one of the greatest environmental challenges, according to NASA, of the next millennium, climate change. Hello? The convergence is part of a trend initiated and supported by NASA to incorporate the multi-generational perspectives spanning centuries with NASA's scientific data on phenomena such as ozone depletion and rising oceans. NASA scientists' grants and technologies are also supporting American Indians' assessments of climate impact on their homelands. For example, Cornell University's Occoquan Press has published a double issue of its widely circulated journal, Native Americans, with the help of a $61,000 grant from NASA's Earth Sciences Enterprise Division. Despite centuries of skepticism, the intersection of hard scientific investigation and the views of American Indians is clear, said Verna Taylor, former Pueblo governor and project director for the Native Peoples Native Homelands Southwest Initiative. Scientists, as she goes on, have always been skeptical, but now we have come full circle. So, there's one that's not an urban legend. If you want to check if you want to check the story yourself, you go to the Chicago Sun-Times, pull up the story called Science Turns to Indians, February 29th of 2000. Read it for yourself. Now, why, I ask myself, would NASA turn to the American native to find out what's going on with climate change? Well, I had some pretty serious American natives on a couple of years ago. Hopi Indians. Hopi elders, actually. They said, the change is not coming, Art. It's here. That's why we're on the air with you. And so now all of a sudden, in a turnabout, a big turnabout, NASA is listening to American natives. A tale from Nebraska from a listener of KFAB 1190 AM in Nebraska, Omaha. Says, good morning, Art. Urban legend, question mark. Somebody is working at a gas station, and one of the regular customers came in with an infected black eye. The cashier asked the customer what happened. The customer said that she went to a strip bar with some friends. They sat near the stage, and she felt something moist hit her face. She wrote it off as sweat from the dancer. When she woke up the next day, her eye was infected. She went to the doctor and found out that a crab had laid eggs in her eye. A crab had laid eggs in her eye. Oh my God, that's nearly as bad as the Star Trek. Remember the worm in the ear? The crab laying eggs. Oh, can you imagine that? The little guys are getting up and walking. You can feel them even with your lids closed, tromping across your eyeball. East of the Rockies, you're on the air. Good morning.
How you doing, Art?
All right, extinguish your radio, yes. Thank you.
Hey, how you doing?
What is that number, that phone number? Because I don't have...
I don't want to give it out on the air.
You don't?
It's on the website.
I don't have that internet.
You know, just in case. I mean, you never know. What if it's some poor old lady in Pasadena or something? It's really a legit phone number, and you can get it on the website.
Darn. All right, thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hello. Hello?
Hello?
Hello.
Hi.
Shall we dance?
No, thank you. My name is Dan.
Okay, then, let's not dance.
Calling from Washougal, Washington.
Yes, Dan.
I have a question to ask you. Is Michael Collins from Apollo 11 still alive?
I have no idea. I'm sorry. I don't know.
The reason I'm asking, I've been asked by a friend of mine who was on the USS Hornet that retrieved Apollo 11 from the ocean to try and get in contact with him. He has something that belongs to Michael Collins that they were awarded. It's a medallion.
Really?
Yes.
And why is he in possession of that?
Well, that's kind of a long story, I guess.
Give me the shortest version.
The shortest version, he was the crane operator that operated the crane that came and retrieved Apollo 11. And eventually he was also an artist. He drew a picture of Michael Collins and presented it to him. Or, well, they couldn't have personal contact because they were enclosed in a trailer at the time. Apparently NASA presented the three astronauts each with a medallion,
right,
commemorating their experience there. And somehow or another he came into possession of this. And as years have gone by, he has taken it to heart to get it back to its rightful owner.
Well, I understand that. I wish I had an answer for you. I don't know offhand, but we'll get an answer, I promise you. All right?
Okay.
All right, thank you very much for the call. I wish I knew. There is a story. Now, this may be urban legend. I don't know. It comes from the Times Foreign News, and I suppose you may have heard about this. Vegetarian Antichrist is walking among us now. By Richard Owen in Rome, Italy. Now, the actual title of the article, in case you're going to want to try to look it up, is Vegetarian Antichrist is Walking Among Us. The leading conservative contender to succeed the Pope yesterday said the Antichrist was already on Earth in the guise of a prominent philanthropist whose concern for human rights and the environment and advocacy of vegetarianism masks his real aim, the destruction of Christianity and the death of God. Well, how could you kill God? Allegedly said by Cardinal Biffi, B-I-F-F-I, 71 years of age, the Archbishop of Bologna, is it? Bologna? I think so. Said the Antichrist was not the beast with 7 heads described in the book of Revelations, but a fascinating personality whose outward charm and plausibility had deceived his enemies. God, could he be talking about our president? No. Cardinal Biffi said the Antichrist espoused vegetarianism, pacifism, environmentalism, and animal rights. Vegetarianism, well, I can't go along with that one. Pacifism, well, who wants to fight? Environmentalism, somebody better fight that one. And animal rights. He also identified the Antichrist as an expert on the Bible. Of course he would be. And nevertheless promotes, quote, vague and fashionable spiritual values, end quote, rather than the scriptures. So, if this story is true and not an urban legend, then the man thought to be the next pope is saying the Antichrist is here now. West of the Rockies, you are on the air. Good morning.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing, Art?
I'm fine.
Okay, this is Ray, and I'm calling from Glendale, California. I'm listening to you on the CC radio. That's on 780 KKOH in Reno.
Oh, that's a blaster of a station, I'll tell you.
Oh, yeah, I love this radio.
I know. Well, look, it's flat the best there is.
Damn right.
Yep.
Boy, howdy.
Yep, it is.
Okay, quick question here. When are you going to have Merle Haggard or Willie Nelson back on there?
Well, I got a fax from Merle a couple of weeks ago, and he'd like to come back on, and I'd love to have him back on.
Uh-huh.
So, anytime.
That would be great, because that's a good show when you had him on there.
Well, both of them are kind of crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And so they're fun to have on the air. I mean, they're just, there's something about country people, they lead the hard life.
Uh-huh. Oh, and one more thing here. Can you give me that webpage for Desert Chad?
It's on mine. Just simply go to my website, www.artbell.com, and you'll see the link right there.
Oh, it's just...
And you can see the phone booth. He's got pictures of the phone booth and all kinds of cool stuff up there.
Okay.
All right?
All right, you have a good one now.
There's one that is not an urban legend. I'll see you later.
All right, thank you.
Bye. First time caller line, you're on the air. Hello.
Yeah, this is Will from Lee, Washington.
Will, turn that radio off. Step on it. That's good.
How you doing tonight?
I'm all right.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting about that Desert Chad.
Desert Chad, yeah.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
Well, people do strange things,
That is totally weird.
Yeah, but it's kind of, in a weird kind of way, interesting. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
the psychology of both sides, the guy would certainly sit out there in the middle of the desert. You got to really wonder about him.
Get out of the town, get away from all the crazy stuff.
And then you got to wonder about the people who call. But I wonder more about the guy who would be out in the desert, getting sunburned and windblown and all that just to talk to people.
That or getting mutilated from some crazy maniac out there.
Or a light with substance.
All right, well, I was just calling to tell you how you doing tonight.
That's a
hello to
question.
the world out
You don't
there.
tell me that. That's a question. How am I doing?
Hard telling. That's up to you.
Thanks for the call.
Yep,
Later. See you later. Everybody just automatically asks that. Have you ever noticed? How you doing? And that's just a nicety that people can't stop from doing. But I used to launch into a litany of little aches and pains that I had. Then once I do that, the knee's a little sore, and I've had this upper arm thing for a while, and a little arthritis here in the fingers, Make them sorry they ever asked. Then for about 2 or 3 days, nobody asks. Then they start in again. Wildcard Line, you're on the air.
Oh, hi, Art. This is Dave from San Jose. Great show, by the way.
Hey, Dave.
That article on Buying Stars to India,
Yes.
you're going to have a tough time getting up the Chicago Sun-Times website because they don't list all their articles. If you look at if you look at the bottom of that article, because I had the fax it right from the paper.
Oh, you're the one who faxed it?
Yeah, there's
here it is. Okay, it says the fall-winter 1999 double issue of the Native American Journal can be viewed on the AKWE CKON press link of the American Indian Program website.
And there's the website address as follow. Did that come through on the fax?
It's hard to read.
All right, I'll fax those two over.
It's at Cornell, though, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a real story. I mean, a lot of people just wouldn't believe this.
Oh, no, but I was trying. Yeah, I know. I was trying.
Why would NASA go to the American native to try and figure out what's going on with climate change?
Obviously, they know something, or they don't know what they have seen something and they don't understand it. Because if you look in that article,
What do I agree?
you'll see that Handsome Lake prophecy.
Yep.
That says, the maples will start dying.
Yes.
I mean, NASA, is observing all this.
Says Handsome Lake said, they said the maple tree, leader of all trees, will begin dying from the top down, and nobody knows how to deal with it. So what you're saying is true. In other words, NASA has run into an obvious brick wall with regard to climate change, which no longer can be explained by saying La Nina El Nino, or any of those things. It's changed way beyond that already, and they damn well know it, and they can see it and document it, and they can't explain it.
Because there is no way they would go to the nation. I mean, publicly,
I agree.
they would never. That's the worst PR move you could ever make.
Oh, I couldn't agree more with you, and it's saying something about NASA's going through some kind of change.
Yep, something's up there. Unless they're just so completely dumbfounded that they have to find someone to help them out. Obviously, right?
I would say this is the rough equivalent of a police department with a murder they cannot solve, picking up the phone and calling a psychic.
Right, you mentioned that last week, and it was a great metaphor. It's the same thing.
So,
the Antichrist story, that's from the Times of London. That's a fairly legit paper. He's from Bologna, by the way, which is in Italy. That's 50. He's like the number 2 man in the Vatican.
Could be the next pope.
That's what for him to come out and say that, I almost fell off my chair when I read that. It was incredible.
Well, I have always heard that the Antichrist would fool us. In other words, that he would appear to be a good, caring, loving being and all that sort of stuff.
Right, because he mimics Christ. He mimics, anti is really not, well, it is against, but it also means instead of. So he mimics, and then traps you in.
Well, it'll be something if that man is made pope. I don't know. All the animal rights people are going to be accused. All the environmentalists, they're all going to be accused of harboring the Antichrist.
There's a great BBC News article on the glaciers melting if you want to check the stats.
All right, I'll take a look at it. I don't need to, though. I know what's happening. The climate is changing, and apparently, even NASA doesn't know why. I'm Art Bell. This is Coast to Coast AM.
Well, call Art Bell from west of the Rockies at 1-800-618-8255. East of the Rockies at 1-800-825-5033. First-time callers may reach out at 1-775-727-1222. The wild card line is open at 1-775-727-1295. And to reach out on the toll-free international line, call your AT&T operator and have them dial 800-893-0903. This is Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell on the Premier Radio Networks.
Richard Roper said I was an urban legend. Am I really an urban legend? I've been thinking about that, and that would mean that I'm not real. But then again, I'm sure many of you have thought that for a long time now. Right?